So yes, I am Professor Muskopf. I teach mostly the project management courses for Terrell Graduate School of Technology. I will go into my intro in a second, but first I want to go into my presentation and I will talk to you guys about who I am as we go through. All right, so let me share out. All right, so this presentation is Artificial Intelligence in Business Operations. I am Bill Muskopf. In this capacity, I'm representing the school, and I am Professor Muskopf, but I am also the Chief Projects Officer for a consulting company called Tuckerview, and I am also the compliance leader for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise for their managed services business. So I wear a lot of hats, but it all revolves around the same kinds of stuff. It revolves around certifications, it revolves around compliance, it revolves around basically making IT businesses more efficient, more able to do their jobs in an efficient manner. All right, so I'm going to do a level set. So here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to raise your hand and keep your hand up if you have ever experienced or have experience with one of these things. So we're going to go first. Who has used machine learning? Put your hand up in Zoom. Do I see any hands? I mean the hands up in Zoom. So I'm not seeing any, but I did see someone raise their hand on video. Unfortunately, I can't bounce through all the videos. All right, I have Youssef. I see, okay. Tracy +1. Okay, so I see 2 people that have used machine learning. What about large language? Keep your hands up. Anyone use large language modules or models? Excuse me, not modules. All right, so we're still at 2. All right, what about unsupervised or supervised learning models? I think Susan just raised her hand. All right, guys, keep your hands up. I want to see the total count. Okay, so who has used, I think we're at 5 right now. Who has used ChatGPT? 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we got 25 people in the room, and I have 8, 9 or so of you who have used ChatGPT. Okay, who has used GPS directions? Raise your hands, keep them up. Then who has used autocorrect? Should be all 25 people, right? All right, I think we may be having a little technical difficulty with the hands up function. Let me do view on here. All right, so I have, let's see, I have about half of you. But in reality, you guys all know almost everyone has used, it's almost impossible to live in our world without using autocorrect or for autocorrect impacting you. And if that's the case, which is true, you guys can all put your hands down. If that is the case, then you have used machine learning, you have used large language modules, you have used unsupervised and supervised learning modules, because these 3 things all run off of these. So even though you don't know you're dealing with AI on a regular basis, you're dealing with it in your core. Every time you pick up your cell phone, every time you sign onto a website, every time you do anything, you are going to be using some sort of AI. It's just the nature of the business. You may not know it, but once you start digging into what AI actually is, the things that you know, things like things that they're talking about, like ChatGPT or Canva or Gamma or any of these other things, and I'm just throwing out examples there, guys. But any of those things, they are all based on the same basic principle, which is the basis of AI. So you're in the right place if you knew the answer. You're in the right place if you didn't know the answer. I am not an AI expert. I'll be very clear about that, but I do deal with business and I deal with customers and I deal with having to script contracts and all of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. And I'll tell you, every single thing that I'm doing today is impacted by AI in one shape or form in some way or another. Sorry, give me a second. Okay, so let's go forward. So I am Professor Bill Muskopf. I am a certified PMP. I'm certified Prince 2 practitioner. I have a master's degree in project management from Boston University. I'm not going to read the rest of this to you, but I do have a lot of experience in the business. And there's one slide in here. You're going to know how much experience I have in the business and how old I am. I love this picture because it's not a backdrop. It looks like it's fake, but it actually isn't. It's actually a picture that was taken. It happened to be an event that Thoreau sponsored. It was called Tech Tuesdays, and it was in Madison Square Park, and that is the Empire State Building in the background. So being a born and raised New Yorker, I love this picture, and I love the fact that I'm speaking in front of a group in the middle of the summer. And you may recognize some of those faces in there. You may recognize Jack Romano's in the back. You may recognize that, I think that's Isaac, our dean, sitting in the bottom right corner. So yeah, they were involved in this activity. It was a few years back, but it was a great experience doing this for Tarot. I use that in my other trainings as well. I don't use that just for my Tarot trainings, but my other trainings, I use that same picture because I love it. So like I said, I'm not an AI expert, but I am very proud to say that I did earn my certificate in artificial intelligence essentials. So in preparation for this presentation with you guys, I wanted to know what the baseline is. I wanted to make sure I understood. I know what I'm seeing in the world, but I don't know or didn't know whether or not what I'm seeing is what I should be seeing, or whether my perspective was off or anything. So I wanted to get the certification just to see if I was seeing what I was supposed to be seeing, and if I was missing anything that I wanted to present to you guys so I don't mislead you guys. So that's the reason why I went for the certification before I finished preparing this presentation. And I'll tell you that everything that I'm seeing and everything that I had already put together is very much in line with what is being taught in artificial intelligence essentials. Excuse me. All right. So what we're going to talk about is a very, very basic intro to AI. We're going to talk about how AI is impacting our business and our lives. And then we're going to talk very briefly about questions, concerns, and the future. And then we're going to do a Q&A session. This is about questions about AI that I'm going to present to you. All right, introduction to AI. So artificial intelligence is basically machines, computer systems, simulating human intelligence. That's it. There's nothing more complicated. There's no more rocket science or anything behind it. It is simply machines simulating human intelligence. Obviously, there's a lot of science behind that, but that is all that AI means. So AI can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and it's more like an entire practice of things. It isn't one thing. It isn't knowing ChatGPT, right? It isn't just knowing Perplexity, or it's not just knowing one thing. It's a whole slew of products that all work together, and they're all based on models that use AI in their core. And when I say a model, think of it like the engine in a car. That's the most common way that we compare this. So the engine in the car drives the car, but the person driving the car very rarely, if ever, touches the engine, right? So ChatGPT and Gemini and all of these other things, they are the car. And the engine inside of it is the AI, right? So that's kind of the way you should look at this. When someone's talking about AI, there's lots of different ways. There are Lexuses and there are Hondas and there are Civics, right? There's, in the same way, there's ChatGPT, there's ChatHP, there's Gemini, or all of these other systems, but the engine in the car is the AI, right? The car that you're sitting in is that app that you're looking at. So the importance of AI in modern business is that it is absolutely changing. It's a game changer. I was just having a conversation with a colleague yesterday, and they said, Bill, the way that we used to have like 3 years to build these models and to be able to solution these things for a customer. And now our competition is doing it in like 3 months. So what used to take 3 years of architecting and building and presentations and negotiating and all of that is now shrunken down into a 3-month period. And that happened in the last 18 months, right? So I can only imagine 18 months from now how that's going to be occurring. It's totally a disruptor. It is totally disrupting the market across the board. And its integration into the competitive environment is absolutely necessary for you to be competitive in any way, shape, or form in almost any business, right? So there's a reason why you don't see as many local bakery stores, right? Like bakeries in around in your hometown, but you see Pan Quotidien and you see Au Bon Pain, or you see, these other like high-end bakery type places that are chains. There's a reason, because there's efficiencies that are gained in doing something on a much more massive scale, and getting all of those efficiencies in making sure that you're doing your marketing the same way, that you're doing your finances the same way. You're not paying for an accountant to do your taxes because you have an entire department that is dedicated to just doing that. Oh, by the way, these big companies, they don't have a department doing that because they're using another company that uses AI to do that kind of stuff for them, right? So what we're seeing in terms of not just the IT industry, but all industries, is impacting everything, and it's impacting everything from our suppliers to our ability to create software for ourselves, to be able to create devices for ourselves, all of it. Excuse me for a second. So the evolution of AI technologies. So first of all, there's a very big misnomer or misunderstanding that AI is a brand new thing. AI has been around forever. So we've almost since the roots of ancient civilization itself, we've been trying to figure out ways to capture what happens in our brain, but be able to do it with technology of some way, shape, or form, right? It has gained significant momentum in the 20th century with the advent of computers and algorithms, right? But the point of it hasn't changed, right? The way that it works hasn't changed, or the expectations of it. Excuse me while I'm moving my screen. Some of the keystones are the creation of the first known AI program, which is 1951, the development of machine learning, neural networks, deep learning, and natural language processing, all of which we're going to talk about very, very briefly, just to explain how they fit in with the rest of what we're experiencing today. So also, AI is a contradiction in many, many ways. It is ancient, yet many experts are talking about this being the start of a brand new industry. Very, very many experts are saying this is a start of a brand new thing. But I think of it like the dreams over thousands of years. People wanted to fly, people wanted to fly, people wanted to fly. They wanted to know how to get to the stars. They wanted to know how to soar above the earth, right? And then suddenly, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers made it happen. Right. So AI is not new in its concept. It's not new in what we wanted to do. We always knew we wanted to fly. Right. But now we actually have the tools that can make it happen. Right. So that's really the difference. That's what's happened in the last couple of years, where we really have these large systems, and we have 5G that's allowing us to have these huge amounts of data that are allowing us to do AI in a way that makes it make sense for the real world, in the real world. So in 1950, this is kind of my benchmark, or my beginning date of when AI actually started in the modern world. And it was with Alan Turing, who created what he called the Turing test in 1950. And Turing had lost a lover and felt horrible about having lost the lover, and decided he wanted to come up with, and he was a very genius mathematician, he decided he wanted to figure out a way to create a computer that he could have intelligent conversations with, like he would with that person. So he knew that he couldn't bring that person back to life, but he was trying to create a computer that would be able to behave as if it was that very, very smart person who he enjoyed conversations with, etc. Right? So what he was trying to do is to come up with something that was equivalent to or undistinguishable from a human. All right. So here's the thing: is that since 1950, so now what, 76 years later, no computer has yet passed the Turing test. No computer has yet been able to fake a human or pretend to be a human, and for another human to have recognized that they weren't non-human. Okay, that's what the Turing test is about. So AI is not new to popular culture either. So in the last few decades, we've had AI doing chess matches. We've had AI doing Jeopardy matches. We've had AI doing Go matches. And in 1997, Garry Kasparov, the reigning world chess champion at the time, beat Deep Blue in a competition, in a match in New York City. It was very highly publicized, and this is where I'm going to show my age. So I was in New York City that day, and I was running what was called the Regional Operations Center, and all of the techs who were standing in the background waiting in case something broke, or had extra parts waiting for, all of the stocking of parts and all of the stuff we needed to do to make sure that Deep Blue didn't have some sort of a technical problem. Those people were all being coordinated through the Regional Operations Center that I was working back then. So Kasparov has always been kind of near and dear to my heart. In fact, I got his book right here. My daughter later on played chess competitively, and still kind of does, not as much as she used to, but she used to play competitive chess. And one of the tournaments she used to go to every year was the Kasparov tournament in New York City. So kind of deep ties with Kasparov and what he does. In 2011, our IBM's Watson computer beat the two reigning champions in Jeopardy, Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter. If you know anything about Jeopardy, Ken Jennings is now the host of Jeopardy. But Watson beat them both in a match in 2011. And then probably the biggest one, because Go is supposed to be something that was almost unsolvable, but the Lee Se-dol was and I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry for anyone who's Korean if I'm saying that incorrectly. But in 2016, Lee Se-dol lost to DeepMind, which is Google's AI. So really interesting that, like I say, it's not that AI is new. It's not that it's brand new, like in the last couple of years. It's been around. It's been growing. It is definitely part of our culture and our technical background. Okay. All right. So the evolution of artificial intelligence, understanding machine learning fundamentals. So machine learning is very, very simple. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that allows a system to learn from the data it is processing without explicit programming. So that doesn't mean that it totally runs on its own. It needs a human to set up the training. It needs a human to set up the system. It needs a human to be able to put the right parameters in. But then essentially you put it in a closet and you let it run and see what it does. That's basically the way that machine learning works. And then occasionally you pull it out, you give feedback on what it has produced, and then let it do its thing again. And then you come back and you say, all right, well, what did it produce now? Right. So you give it feedback and you give it training at the beginning. Then essentially the programming kind of happens on its own, like kind of behind the curtains. Right. Then you have traditional programming relies on explicit instructions. Machine learning empowers the system to adapt and improve itself over time. Okay. But it's important to remember that it all starts and ends with humans, and that humans create the initial training, the feedback, and the output does not. If the output does not suit the humans, then the overall program is unsuccessful. So a lot of people are scared that suddenly we're going to have a Terminator situation where Skynet became self-aware and August 29th, 1997, which is kind of funny that it was so long ago. But if you know anything about the Terminator movies and the fear of AI, that's what everyone's afraid of, is that the Skynet or the computer system is going to become self-aware. That's what the movie is based on. All right. So you have machine learning, which has supervised, unsupervised, and then reinforced learning. Supervised learning means that you are training the AI using labeled data. You've said, these are all cars, these are all trucks, these are all wagons, these are all bicycles. And you've trained the system to know and recognize what those things are. Unsupervised learning allows the algorithms to identify what those things are without any labels. So you just throw a whole bunch of different kind of vehicles in there, and they have to figure out how it gets sparsed out or how it gets categorized. Then you have reinforced learning, which focuses on training through rewards and penalties. So it would basically be when they properly identified a bicycle, it would get some sort of a reward, or it would show that it was improving in the right direction. Or in some cases, they use the Darwin way of survival of the fittest. Kind of, that's reinforcement learning as well, because only the best are able to survive and procreate and create more of themselves, right? That's kind of what reinforced learning is about. I'm trying to watch my time, guys. All right. So then you have neural networks. So neural networks are basically mimicking the human brain. We're trying to simulate intelligence, right? Human intelligence. But then neural networks actually work the same way a brain is fit together, with neurons processing information, and they transmit signals through connections that are called synapses, which is exactly the way your brain works, right? We have neurons, they communicate through synapses, and it learns by adjusting the strengths of those connections. So basically it's saying it's either encouraging a connection by making it stronger, or it's dissuading the system from going in that direction by making that synapse smaller. Okay, making the connection smaller or less strong. Deep learning, which you'll hear about a lot, is basically using multi-layered neural networks. So taking many of those networks and using them to decipher huge complex data sets. So if you know anything about what's going on in the world right now, I happen to work for HPE. Like I said, I'm a compliance leader for them. And what has been just released recently is called El Capitan, which is the largest complex data computer ever created. And it basically is just that. It is a very huge neural network of information processing units that are able to process a huge amount of data because it all goes through as if it was a human brain contacting each other and all the synapses, clicking on each other and all of that stuff. The same way, if you've learned anything about how brains work, that's how it works. It's just a very large one with lots and lots and lots of neural networks connected together, like your own brain. All right, then you have what's called large language models, and they are about training capabilities and the transformation of AI. So there's vast training that has happened in these huge data sets or with these huge data sets in order to make these large language models work properly and work in our benefit to produce something that we want to create, right? Again, excuse me. They have diverse capabilities, very diverse capabilities. They can generate human-like text. We see that in things like ChatGPT and Google Translate, and you can use Google Translate in several different ways, including using it to actually do a translation, not just word for word, but you can do it to translate your language. So I was in Poland recently, and I wish I had known that I could have done this, where you can basically hold the phone and it will translate from both languages. I could have been speaking in English, that person could have been speaking in Polish, and we could have been having a full-on conversation as if we had an interpreter who knew both languages. And they'll translate it, the nuances, the emotion, the ways of speech, all of that stuff gets included. So just think of what that could do, even if you go to your corner store and the person there speaks Arabic or they speak Spanish or they speak, some other language that you can't, you don't necessarily know yourself, or you go to a church service or some sort of religious service and you don't understand what the language that's being spoken. You go to a Roman Catholic church and they're speaking Latin. Well, you can turn that on and you can understand what they're saying in a Roman Catholic church or a Greek Orthodox church or a Jewish temple or whatever, right? It's amazing what these models are able to do and what you can use them for. AI transformation is transforming industries like IT. We're seeing it every day. Every day something is changing. It's changing in healthcare. We're seeing it in medical billing. You're seeing it in the way that things are diagnosed. We're seeing it in the way that prescriptions are being distributed, all of that stuff. Education is huge, right? We know there's a negative side in education where people are using it to cheat, which is kind of counterintuitive, because if you're paying for education, it's kind of stupid to try to cheat. But people are using it to try to cheat, and there are also just as many things are built in order to allow cheating. There's just as many applications out there to catch people cheating using AI, and those things, guess what, were built using AI, right? So it's very interesting the way all of these things are coming together. We also have generative AI, and generative AI basically is what we see and what we think of, most people think of when they think of AI. You go to ChatGPT and you want to generate a paragraph on, who was the first person to come to the United States, or, how big is the Yucatan Peninsula, or whatever, right? You can use generative AI in order to ask those questions and to get human input that you can use in order to build your presentation or whatever. You can also actually use it for writing articles, generating art, composing music, creating marketing content. And I will give you guys a moment to think about what are you guys looking at right now, and how do you think I made it? Everything that you're seeing, it's been edited, but everything that you're seeing in this entire presentation from the beginning till now has all been generated by AI. And all of it was generated relatively quickly. Not saying that I didn't spend a lot of time, going through what I wanted to present and everything, but as far as actually getting it into a PowerPoint, to create this slide alone would have taken me a good hour or so in the past. It literally took me maybe 30 seconds to get 10 slides, which I then decided which ones I wanted, which ones I didn't, discarded which ones I didn't, and then edited the ones that I wanted. This may have taken me 10% of the amount of time that it would have without AI. So that alone is changing what we do day to day. I read contracts all day long. I create PowerPoints all day long. I do speeches all day long. I do create content all day long. I create statements of work and I create SOPs, statements of operations, right? My standard operating procedures, all of these things. I'm constantly editing. I'm constantly updating. And AI has changed, like I said, just in the last 18 months, has completely changed the way that business even works. The thing with that is that there's also an expectation that has changed because people think, oh, when I used to ask someone for a PowerPoint that's 10 pages long, I used to give them 10 days to get it to me. Now I ask them and I want it in an hour, right? So there's a different perception as well of what you can accomplish and the quality of things that can get done. But here's my big note to you guys. So the one thing we have to make sure we are doing in AI is we need to make sure we are giving the tools feedback because the tools are stupid, right? They're extremely smart. They're generations beyond anything that you or I could possibly keep in our head, but they're stupid because they don't know exactly what you're trying to get across, and they make grand assumptions. They do what's called, in some cases they're called hallucinations. They create things that don't actually exist because they have a lot of data that says something might exist, and they decide that it does exist, and they start building on it. The example I've used in other cases is the floating bridge, right? So some people think, there is a thing called a floating bridge, right? But a floating bridge is not the Golden Gate or the Brooklyn Bridge. A floating bridge is a very small thing that you can't see how it's supported, but it's supported by rocks and wires and metal rods and whatever. So it looks like it's floating, but it isn't. So if you or AI could create a hallucination that says, I'm going to build a floating bridge the size of the Golden Gate or the Brooklyn Bridge, right? That's never going to happen. It's a hallucination. It can't actually happen. But because it has enough data to know that they exist, they can be supported, they are mentioned in several different architectural, digests and whatever, that they are something that is real, that AI could create a situation where it's going to say, oh, sure, there are floating bridges the size of the Brooklyn Bridge. Not true. So you need to make sure that we are correcting the models as we go. And every single model, when you go in and you do ChatGPT or you do Gamma or you do Perplexity or you do any of them, they always have a feedback button. And that's really what's at the core of what we need to do as humans, is we need to be giving the direction so that we avoid, and we're going to talk a little bit about bias and stuff in a minute, but AI needs us to be giving feedback if they give us something wrong, if they show something that is incorrect or false. It's not going to know it if you just ignore it, right? So you're also empowering others to do things, for you, that you don't want them doing for you. You don't want others deciding what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false. So if you discover something that is incorrect in any one of these models, make sure you give it the feedback so that it gets better going forward. All right, so that's it for my technical spiel on AI, which obviously you guys saw. I am not technical. I am a business management person. I happen to work in the IT industry and have a lot of experience in the IT industry, but I am not a tech. If you guys want more information on the specifics of AI, then Professor Corsandi did a great show, a great workshop like this one a few weeks back, and you guys can get the recording of it. Professor Corsandi is really, really awesome, and the way that he put together that presentation is amazing. So if you want more information on that, go watch that, and he goes into a lot more. He is a tech that I am not. All right, so let's talk about business and life. So here's the things that we're seeing in business. So in cloud deployment, we are seeing vast amounts of AI models being used in terms of the scalability, flexibility, and cost effectiveness of offerings coming out from IBM, from Microsoft, from HPE, from all of the different big players. We're seeing these incredibly large amounts of customized solutions coming out that are phenomenally powerful, and being able to use a huge amount of scalability because it's cloud, being able to do a ton of cost-effective work because it is not requiring on-site technicians and entire staffs of IT people and all of that stuff. There's also this one piece of cloud deployment, or excuse me, of the environment that doesn't want to go cloud. They want to go on-prem. They want on-premise devices. They want to be able to control them. And because there are the AI models out there, they're able to do that. So we're able to create huge clusters of servers that can stay within the firewalls of the company and still be serviced as if it was something that was exposed to the outside world, because these AI models are smart enough to pretend as if they are connected to the outer world or outside world. You also have hybrid solutions, which I work for HPE, as I've mentioned, and this is our sweet spot. We talk about doing everything as a service. So when we talk about everything as a service, we're doing hybrid solutions where we have some on-premises technology, but then we have the possibility of scaling based on the cloud services. So we can, if a customer comes to us and says, hey, I have 1 million users today, I'm adding 10,000 more users tomorrow, then we can say, all right, we can supply that to you immediately. It's not going to be on-prem. It's not going to be part of their physical environment, but because of virtualization and because of the way that we can use cloud, we can extend their environment virtually without them actually having to add any equipment physically to their environment, right? So that's what's changing. It has a lot to do with the way that AI works. It's not direct from AI, but there's a lot that makes that work because of AI. All right. So we are also seeing, huge for me, we are also seeing real-time analytics happening. So a lot of what I work with are IT operations centers all around the world, and they do everything from monitoring services. They do everything from doing incident and problem management and doing deployments and all of this stuff, right? And what we're seeing more and more is that the systems we're using are very quickly becoming extremely aware of the environments that they're in, and able to, where it used to be I had to have a technician, there's an event, we have an error, let's look up that error. Oh, it's error 000123445. That means that we have a problem with this server, and the problem is with a hard drive, and we've researched it, and it's potentially it's firmware update would fix it, right? Common situation, right? Something that could happen, anytime, in any environment, anywhere. Now, with AI, I don't even know what happens. I may get an alert that firmware was updated, but the AI goes out, says, all right, here's the error. Here's the device that it's occurring on. Here's the or the CI, right? Configuration item that it's working on, if you guys are familiar with what a CI is. So here is the solution that we've decided on. And because 97% of the time that's been the solution, we're going to deploy the new firmware to that server without anyone doing anything, right? So this used to be 10 steps of human interaction, is now down to 1, and that 1 is just alerting you that firmware was updated. So amazing amount of technology. And some people are saying, like, well, yeah, that's fine for HPE and Microsoft, but this is happening in mom and pop shops. And if you have a single server in a deli somewhere, right, but you're paying for a managed service solution from anyone, Google or whoever, right, that is going to happen on your server that's in, single server in the back of someone's, store that someone's spilling ketchup on, right? That's still going to happen in that store, because they're not the ones that are managing this huge AI model and application and everything. They're just paying for a simple service, right? Support my PC. But that company, HPE or whoever, they don't want to be dealing with that little tiny server. Why? I'm huge. I don't want to deal with that little server. Let me create an app that uses AI to say, hey, manage that thing so I don't have to worry about it. Right. So it's not just, don't think about these things as just impacting a huge cluster of servers or something like that. These are happening in very, very small, very, very pervasive inside. We talk about the edge, right? Edge devices, things that are the scanner that you hold in a retail store that scans a SKU, right? We're talking about very, very, individual devices that are being managed by AI. You just don't know that it's AI that's running all of that stuff in the background. When that scanner scans that barcode, it's queuing up a huge, huge database full of SKUs, right? And it's identifying what that particular SKU is. And it's saying, all right, well, that particular SKU is associated with this kind of can of bean, and we know that that's made by Campbell's, and we know that we have 17 more in inventory, and we know that they sell out at 20 per month, so therefore we're going to add 3 more to the next order, and it's going to refill our retail shop without anyone doing anything. No one took inventory. No one did anything except for they went to the register, they scanned the barcode. All that other stuff happened without any human having anything to do with it, right? So that's where it's amazing how pervasive this is, and it is in our everyday, in your face. It is happening on a regular basis, and that's where we need to be very aware and very cognizant of what's happening. And if we want to work and we want to be competitive against someone else, whether it's the one person in the office that's being able to put out more presentations for the boss, or it's that corner store that's able to refill its Campbell's soup cans quicker than its neighbor so it never runs out. All of it is being driven by AI, and all of it makes you perform or not perform in comparison to your peers in that industry, right? So we all need to be doing this. We all need to be improving ourselves. As Stephen Covey said, we need to sharpen our saw, right? You need to constantly be sharpening your saw, becoming better. The reason why I just went for that Google certification, because I'm seeing this and I'm going, oh my God, I need to, yeah, I have all of these certifications, but you know what? They're worth a lot, but they're not going to be worth as much if I'm not staying up to speed with what's going on with AI in our very, very vast, increasing, accelerating world. So AI in the industry above and beyond IT. So we do have manufacturing automation, which we've seen for years, right? We've seen that robots do welding in factories for building cars or building washing machines or whatever, right? We've seen that manufacturing automation has been happening for years. Now we're seeing more things like predictive maintenance, where we're seeing equipment anticipating that it's going to fail and therefore notifying itself or notifying another. We talk about the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things means that there are things that are talking to each other without a human intervening. So if there's a bearing that's starting to go out in a moving device, right, and that device is able to determine that it is getting too hot, and therefore that means that that device is probably needs new bearings, it's able to predictively reach out to its inventory system and say, hey, order more bearings, and when they come in, notify someone to, hey, swap out the bearing that is going bad. That totally eliminates downtime or unexpected downtime, reduces repair costs, reduces any kind of loss where things may have happened during the process of something breaks, and therefore whatever it was building breaks too, right? So there's a ton of different things that are happening in the real world day to day that are being impacted by AI. Now, the one thing that I've found really interesting, and I use, I'm not a developer, guys. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a techie, but occasionally I need to do something like I need to say, all right, I need to create a weird pivot table in a Excel sheet, and I need to be able to do it in such a way that it's going to configure this way, and I want a bar chart as the outcome, and I want it to be labeled in this way, and what I used to have to do is used to have to basically do trial and error, right? I would create a pivot chart and I'd be like, oh, that doesn't look the way I want it to. I want this row to be where that row is. So I switch that around, and then I run it again, and I do, and I do it again. Now, what I can do, which is crazy, is I can go right to ChatGPT or any of the others. I can type in my language, in natural language, what I want to do. I want a pivot table. I want it to show this data. I want the rows to look like this. I want the columns to look like that. I want the data to be in this font. I want, blah, 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 all the things that I want. And I hit enter. And guess what it does? It creates that Visual Basic software load, that code for me, right? It's amazing, amazing. That used to take me, it would take me, months to do the kind of things that I can now do in moments. So that's not changing just the, Bill Muskopf's world. That isn't just changing the way that I do work on a day-to-day basis. It's also going to change the way that developers are able to do their work, and whether or not we need as many developers as we have doing those low-level tasks. So therefore, those developers need to increase their skills so that they can do higher-level stuff, so that they're not wasting their time and wasting their skills doing stupid Visual Basic coding that Bill Muskopf needs, right? So that is the kind of thing that's happening. And it's, like I said, it is impacting us every single day. It is changing the way people in the office, my office, every office, are doing what they do every single day, and improving, right? It's making your jobs more efficient. It's making things easier to produce. It's making things much more less tedious, less errors, less error prone. But there's a concern, because obviously if you take away much of the work that needs to be done, we might not need as many humans to do the work. So that's why, as I said, we should always be increasing our skills. For those of you that are in the graduate school, you guys are in the right place, because you need to become better. You need to become more valuable. You need to be able to do more, with the what God gave you, right? With what your brain does. And for those of you who are considering, getting into a program like Thoreau's Graduate School of Technology, it's an awesome program. Your peers are incredible people. You have some really, really awesome professors like this one. Just kidding. But you do have like really good resources, really good resources as far as like Freddie and Pravina and Lushan, who are supporting us right now in doing this presentation. This is a school that really cares about individual students and making sure that everyone does what they need to do in order to get their to get the objectives done. And like I said, for career-wise, having a master's degree from the Graduate School of Technology is a phenomenally good place to start your career or to continue your career. All right, where are we at? Okay, so real-world applications, don't need to go into too much here. You guys get it, right? There's Siri, there's Alexa, that there's ways that you can, that you mentioned something right now, and you mentioned something about, I'd really like a black waterproof winter coat, and a couple minutes later, suddenly you get an advertisement on Facebook or whatever that says, hey, we're having a sale on black, weatherproof coats, right? We all know those things happen and that they're real and that they, how that works. It's all part of these huge models. And like I said, the model in terms of AI is the engine, right? It's the engine in the car. But what we see is what Amazon has put over that. If you notice on your screen, there's Zoom AI now, right? A Zoom assistant. I forget what it's called, and I can't see it right now, but there's Zoom AI assistant or something that is within Zoom. Every company is getting on this bandwagon because they have to, right? This is changing the way we do things on a day-to-day basis, whether it's buying a can of soup or it is, writing your dissertation for the graduate school or getting your doctorate or whatever, right? It doesn't matter what it is. AI is going to be part of your life, so you might as well embrace it. Like I said, we have virtual assistants, smart home devices in the course. One of the courses that I'm teaching right now, MSIN 662, which is about IT governance. Some of you guys are in that class. One of the things we're talking about right now, we just had a long conversation about, is these devices, this Internet of Things, where your refrigerator is telling your Amazon account to order food because you're out of milk, or because it knows what's in the fridge, and the fridge says, all right, well, usually we go through 12 eggs in 2 days, and we've gone through 12 eggs today, so we're going to order 2 dozen eggs for tomorrow, and they're going to send it right to your Amazon account. The Amazon account is going to order it. It's going to get charged directly to your credit card or whatever you have on file, and it's going to get shipped. No human ever touched it, right? That isn't science fiction. That's today, right? That's what's happening right now. And it's very, very easy for these things to continue to happen, and they will continue to happen. And again, we have recommendation engines that recommend different products, services, whatever, based on what you've done before. You've watched the same movie, or you're like, I'm constantly watching YouTube videos on AI and ISO 9000 and ISO certifications, and God only knows what all else, and the history of the military in northern Africa or whatever. And it's constantly suggesting more things to you, right? It's constantly suggesting more similar content, right? We see it every day. So the last piece of this is ethical considerations. So I've talked a lot about making sure you give feedback. There is a very, very, very big push to make sure that we are giving feedback appropriately to these tools, because there is bias in the systems. Things like if you go to Canva and you put in, show me a picture of a nurse. If it spits back to you that every nurse is a female picture, that's a problem. So you should address it. You should give that feedback. If you put in doctor and every picture it comes up with is a male, you should also give feedback, right? It's not appropriate for the system to think that those things, and those are bad examples because they've been fixed. I can tell you, if you look up nurse in any of the apps, that automatically does not default to a female role, or doctor as a male role. But that's the kind of examples, right? We need to have the systems learn from our personal experiences. I know I have way more female doctors than I have male doctors, right? So it used to be that was the thought, but that isn't the case at all anymore, right? So we have to make sure that we are giving the right feedback and providing the right direction, and that is done through the feedback buttons, through the I like this content, I don't like this content, thumbs up, thumbs down, all of that stuff. So give your feedback. It's all around us. It's not going away. And the only way it's going to be most effective is if we all provide feedback to it. And I'm just going to give you an example of, so I said, all of this was created through AI. Absolutely. I've done a lot of editing. I've done a lot of studying. I've done a lot of fact checking and things like that. But if you look at the bottom right screen, this was made with Canva, right? Some of these slides were. Some of it was made with AI PPT. Some of it was made with just general queries into ChatGPT, or I have HPE version, which you guys don't have access to unless you work for HPE. But I've used that for some of the stuff that was more technical that I wanted to get some clarity on. And the only reason why I can use it is that I'm on the pilot team to actually train the chat HPE is what it's called. So I can use that and use the data. I'm not going to show you guys the internal HPE data. Obviously, I'm restricted by confidentiality and all that kind of stuff, but I can share with you the way that it's working. And again, it is the same as anything else. The model is one thing. The model is the engine. What Chat HPE is, it's the car on top of it, right? It's that car that is designed specifically for HPE employees to use the model the way that we want to use it, right? And to get the data that we want to use. So ethical process. This is what I was saying. You kind of have to talk about this anytime you talk about AI. You need to make sure you are looking for fairness and making sure that you're rooting out bias when you see it. And bias can be ageism. Bias can be, based on, your the assumptions of, like, one of the assumptions, one of the interesting stories, and we have an international audience here. So I'm gonna save a question for when we're done, because we're almost done. But there's a question I want to ask that I think is telling, which has to do with fairness and bias. We also need to make sure that we have transparency, providing clear documentation and explanations of how it's doing what it's doing. So a lot of times the AI, the way that it's doing what it's doing is not anything that we can decipher, right? But we do need to know that those decisions were being made by a computer as opposed to a human, and that those outputs are not something that is negative, nefarious, dangerous, right? We need to make sure that we are having transparency with those things. And then we need to be accountable and hold the companies accountable through feedback, through whatever means necessary, to make sure that they are not doing anything that is unethical with AI. There's also regulatory compliance, of course. So there's data privacy laws, there's GDPR, there's HIPAA, there's all these others that we need to be worried about. And a lot of these things are handled within the companies, but a lot of them, if it exposes something to you and you're a business and exposes something to you, like people's social security numbers or something, then suddenly you're responsible for that because you've now gotten data that you should not have, right? So you need to be able to report that and be able to get yourself out of that situation without causing more havoc, right, for yourself or for the people whose numbers you've exposed. Industry specific regulations similar. And then, of course, you have, ISO international standards like ISO 27000, which is the cybersecurity. I'm an ISO 20000 auditor. I'm working on my ISO 9000 auditor certification right now, which is about quality management. And there's lots of different, of those standards that are out there. There's lots of different ways that the industry is trying to police itself.